This is all, distraction, frankly. And then to have said that we need to think about having a national conversation on mandatory vaccines in this country, I'm sorry. I mean, I'm actually feeling quite rebellious. I mean, I really am. And if there was a march or a protest against mandatory vaccines, do you know what? I'd blooming well go.
Hello and welcome to This Week in Review with Nigel Farage. Nigel, we'll start with the crisis that is engulfing the country, which is, of course, the the England batting lineup over in Australia with the Ashes. What's your comment?
Well, I have to say, we keep losing 5-love in Australia. I feel very confident it'll be 5-love again. It's been poor. And I must admit, being a cricket fan, the start was midnight and I thought, well, no, I'm not really going to stay up. And then it was 11 o'clock. I thought, well, it's only another hour. And I'll watch it till lunchtime. And I sort of barely went to bed and watched with incredulity as Root won the toss and went to bat on the greenest wicket I've ever seen in Australia. I mean, it's been raining like Billy-O in Brisbane. And for all the world, I know that Anderson wasn't playing, but for all the world, that was a toss to win and to bowl. I just couldn't believe it.
I bet you've never prayed for rain so much in your life.
Well, I don't. There's too much time left for us to be saved in this one. So, and Australia dominant, even without Steve Smith getting many runs. So, it's going to be a very tough few weeks for England's cricketers down under. Very difficult to see, I would have thought, what turns this around.
Let's move on to the big story in financial markets, which is the Evergrande default. Now, officially a default according to Fitch ratings. You've said before that China's the big issue in the global economy now. So what do you make of this story?
Well, I mean, look, China has had this meteoric growth over the last few years, this burgeoning of capitalism, which the communists have now checked quite heavily. There are huge developments all over China being blown up and bulldozed. And you do begin to wonder whether perhaps, we're seeing signs of serious overheating going on within China. Yeah, sure, they're going from being a poor country to being a rich country, but nothing ever moves in straight lines. And so I do think, actually, that China, in many ways, is going to find the next few years a lot more difficult than it's found the last few.
Our mutual friend Jim Rickards is fond of pointing out that very few countries, I think just South Korea, has escaped what's called the middle income trap, meaning that it's a country that was developing and has become a very wealthy first world economy. Do you think China's going to get stuck in that middle income trap?
It's tough to say, isn't it? I mean, a population of 1.4 billion. And, if you use that term, about how many Chinese people are you actually using it? And that, I think, is the difficulty. I kind of think that we may see fewer big Chinese billionaires developing. I think kind of that suited the Putin model, to have a few big oligarchs, running aluminium, oil, whatever it may be, gas, whatever it may be. I don't think the Chinese communists are going to allow more Jack Ma type figures to emerge. And I do think that the vast majority of Chinese people will stay in relative poverty. It's going to be difficult to get the kind of advances in the next decade. And I'm taking politics out of it completely, but difficult to get social and economic advancement on an individual level, anything like the last 10 years. So yes, there will be a little bit of a trap.
The other thing that's making waves in financial markets is the Omicron variant of COVID. Are you getting worried about this one, or is this just another variant? Or
No. Are we to lock up? Are we to run away in fear every time a new variant comes? How many years are we supposed to do this for? The next 5, the next 10, the next 50? I mean, the whole thing's ludicrous. Look, I'm not a bioscientist, but all the evidence is that whilst this thing may spread very quickly, it isn't particularly virulent. So it could actually be a blessing in disguise, in that it could give a lot of people natural immunity. Now, unless I'm missing something, I thought natural immunity was better actually than vaccination or inoculation. So I don't think Omicron is likely to pose anything like the problem we saw with the Delta variant. But it's come at a good time for Boris Johnson. Lucky old Boris, saved for the moment by Omicron.
I'm not so sure about that one. Actually, let's dig
I
into
said
that
for the
ceiling.
moment. I said for the moment.
What's going to happen to him? I mean, let's leave all of the obvious things aside in terms of the outrage and the ridiculousness of it, and just how infuriating it is. What's going to happen?
I've spent some time with Conservative MPs, some former very senior cabinet type minister MPs. They're in despair. Quite a lot of them are quite close to mutiny. Boris Johnson's only there for one reason. Start of 2019, he was one of the most unpopular people in the Parliamentary Conservative Party. And even those that respected him for twice voting against Mrs. May's terrible deal, then lost all respect for him when he supported it third time round. And yet, and in many ways, because of what I did, the Spartans held out. We didn't leave the EU on bad terms. Let me come in with the Brexit party, smash them to smithereens in the European elections. And suddenly, Boris is the hero and the saviour. And his sort of jolly optimism and his false promises about what would happen in the Irish Sea, etc., sailed them through to victory. He's there for one reason and one reason only, to help them win elections. When they don't think he can win elections, then he's toast. And I mean, the polling now suggesting the Labour Party 4 points ahead. And that's a Labour Party lacking any real firm smack of leadership. But my view is this. If you drive down the motorway at 120 miles an hour every night, you might get away with it for 3 months, 6 months, a year. But you know what happens in the end? You get caught. You get caught. And if you lie about everything in your journalistic life, your personal life, and your political life, and get away with it year after year after year, at some point, it catches up with you. So I think the absolute crux of all of this is that twice he's told the House of Commons there was no party, right? At the moment, it's proved that not only was there a party, which obviously there was, but that he knew about it, then we're in a very different place. November the 13th, there was a party in the flat organised by Carrie. 13 people attended that, completely against lockdown rules. The newspapers have the names. They haven't yet released them. Are you telling me that Boris didn't know that? Did Boris not know there was a party taking place in his own flat, organised by his wife? So I think the lies begin to unravel. People say, Nigel, he gets away with everything. He'll get away with this. I'm not so sure. I think the beginning of the end has now happened. And in response to it, as a diversionary tactic, to announce Plan B, to announce we must wrap ourselves in face masks wherever we go, got to have, in England, vaccination passports to attend major events or go to nightclubs. This is all, distraction, frankly. And then to have said that we need to think about having a national conversation on mandatory vaccines in this country. I'm sorry. I mean, I'm actually feeling quite rebellious. I mean, I really am. And if there was a march or a protest against mandatory vaccines, do you know what? I'd blooming well go. It is completely unacceptable. It is wholly unconservative. And I think yesterday, with the House of Commons appearance, with the press conference later on, I think he's digging himself deeper and deeper and deeper, and he's going to struggle to survive. I mean, I really think he is.
Nigel, I'll see you at that march. Thanks very much for joining us.